Good morning. It's May 2nd. This is to my liberal friends. Well, the clock is ticking, and Congress and the President will have to come up with a solution on the debt limit. The Treasury Department is running out of financial trickery to stay within the current limit. And it boggles my mind that as a nation, we're now over $31 trillion in debt, and we need to raise that figure. The stalemate is at the White House, read that Joe Biden, and the Democrats refuse to sit down and negotiate a solution to the spending that has caused the crisis. Let me make that plain. Spending is the cause of this massive debt, and we cannot continue down this path without some dire circumstances falling upon the nation. Now, Biden told Republicans that he needed to see their budget, and guess what? They produced their budget, along with an increase to the debt limit. But that was not good enough for the progressives in the White House, and they told Joe to say no. The only thing they will accept is a clean increase in the debt limit. This would allow them to continue spending on whatever they want, no limits. I'm going to chalk this up to Joe Biden having memory issues and fully relying on what he's told by his staff. What's confusing is because as a senator, Joe Biden fully knew what the constitutional reality was on this issue, and he voted many times for debt limit increases that included major policy, read that spending, reforms, and at times Biden, the senator, refused to vote to increase the debt limit if the then administration did not meet his demands on cutting spending. Joe Biden spent 4 months challenging Republicans to do one thing, to show them a debt ceiling, show a plan. Now House Republicans, by a narrow margin, passed a debt limit bill last Wednesday, packed with spending cuts, and the conservative priorities is forcing Biden to shift tactics. The White House and congressional Democrats are preparing to ramp up attacks on House Republicans over the bill, targeting swing district members for endorsing policies that would strip investments in their home districts and gut funding for popular programs. Biden's party insists it's feeling little pressure to now deliver on House Speaker Kevin McCarthy's biggest ask, a true negotiation over the debt ceiling. And Biden so far has refused to budge from his demand that Congress pass an unconditional increase to the debt ceiling, betting that he still holds the stronger hand in the face of an economic catastrophe. And while a smattering of moderate Democrats have begun urging the president to actually negotiate with Republicans, the majority of these progressives seem content with showcasing a GOP bill they see as self-inflicted wound in swing seats. But Democrats' public confidence that they're winning the message war masks private concerns over how this all ultimately ends and what damage the standoff may do to a fragile, recovering economy that's critical to Biden's case for re-election. Biden's allies had expected McCarthy's bid to pass a sweeping debt ceiling bid to fail, especially after watching him struggle to win the speakership and quickly abandon his plan to construct a full budget proposal. Even the Republicans understood the skepticism directed at them with a thin majority. But the GOP, for its part, relearned one of Washington's oldest truths: unity is strength. This is a legitimate victory for Mr. McCarthy, especially given the effort it took to achieve it. And don't forget, this was a vote to raise the debt ceiling, something many Republicans opposed in their DNA. Wednesday's legislation was for dozens of members their first vote ever for a debt ceiling increase. It helps that the GOP's $4.8 trillion package of deficit reduction provisions is eminently reasonable. The party chose to focus entirely on spending reductions, avoiding the urge to use the legislation for more hot-button priorities like tax cuts. And the provisions they chose have broad public appeal. Democrats will continue to demagogue the bill, but it's going to be a tough sell. Average Americans don't see a problem with returning spending levels to those of 2 years ago, or clawing back money for a pandemic that's long over, or asking childless, able-bodied adults to work a few hours in return for welfare, especially when we have a $31 trillion debt. In the aftermath of the vote, Biden allies and advisors privately acknowledge there's no clear endgame to the debt ceiling standoff, and that McCarthy's victory makes it more difficult to convince moderate Republicans to back a clean debt ceiling increase for fear of economic disaster. So the White House signaled that Biden would now be willing to meet with McCarthy for the first time since early February. But they were sticking to their long-standing position that any negotiations be over the broader federal budget, not the debt ceiling. Democrats will once again focus on telling people, falsely, that Republicans want to cut Social Security and Medicare. I guess it does not matter how many times Kevin McCarthy says these two programs are not up for negotiation, and they're not included in the Republican blueprint. The Democrats will continue this lie, and their most avid partisans will repeat it to themselves and their friends. And some in the liberal media will repeat this lie and smile while they do it. But if we learn nothing from the Tucker Carlson episode, it is that these vapid talking heads say one thing for their audience while privately saying something different. Bottom line, Biden needs to sit down and negotiate some agreement with McCarthy. He needs to acknowledge that our deficits are spiraling out of control and the national debt cannot continue to climb without some budgetary reforms and controls. The message might be sinking in since Secretary Yellen says we might hit the wall on June 1st. And according to the Washington Post this morning, Biden is finally willing to sit down and discuss the debt limit and spending. He has not agreed to negotiate, but we all know in the end he will have to. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.